Nick's invitation arrived like a thunderbolt, a sleek black envelope embossed with gold, summoning Brooke Logan to Italy aboard his private yacht, the Amalfi Star. For a rekindling of memories, he vowed to make as grand as their first stolen kiss under the Tuscan moon. From the moment she set foot on the polished teak deck, the scented breezes of the Mediterranean carried echoes of passion and promise. Every whispered greeting from the crew a reminder that Nick Maroone was pulling out all the stops to remind Brooke of the love story they once shared, and the one he still believed in. As the yacht glided away from Portofino and into the blush of a summer sunset, the horizon melted into warm coral and lavender, and Nick, clad in a crisp white shirt and linen trousers, offered Brooke a flute of champagne so cold it sparkled like the icy fjords he once dared to conquer. He spoke of Italy's beauty not just as scenery, but as a canvas for the second act of their romance, recounting private jokes under cypress trees, late-night strolls through moonlit piazzas, and the firework thrill of secret rendezvous in rented villas overlooking the Amalfi Coast. Each memory unfurled like a silk ribbon, enveloping Brooke in nostalgia so intoxicating she almost forgot, for a heartbeat, the tangled web of loyalties and betrayals that defined her life back in Los Angeles. But as the yacht's engines hummed a steady lullaby beneath the rim of her glass, a shadow slipped through the golden haze. Whispers of Ridge Forrester's growing jealousy carried on the wind, rumbling across continents like distant thunder. Word of Nick and Brooke's Italian escape reached Ridge at Forrester Creations in Los Angeles in the form of a terse text message: Brooke in Italy. Alone. And with Nick. His heart pounded as if his own blood were heating like molten steel. The man who had built his empire on precision and craftsmanship found himself unmoored, seized by a phantom fear that Brooke, his anchor and his storm in equal measure, was drifting into the arms of his most formidable rival. Within hours, he booked his flight, abandoned whatever meetings and commitments tethered him to California's sun-drenched coast, and landed in Rome with eyes blazing, plane tickets crumpled in his hand like a red flag to a bull. He raced through the cobblestone labyrinth of Trastevere, his mind replaying every stolen glance, every polite handshake between Brooke and Nick, and the crescendo of his jealousy demanded a grand gesture. He would propose to her in the Eternal City itself, on the very spot where, years ago, they had first whispered their vows to love, to honor, to endure beyond the limits of time. As the sun dipped behind the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, Ridge knelt in a secluded garden of Villa Borghese, a ring heavy with diamonds and promises in his outstretched palm, ready to redefine their future. But fate, as always, had other plans. Unbeknownst to Brooke, whose heart fluttered between past and present, Nick carried a burden as heavy as the Adriatic anchor chained to the yacht's hull. He had covertly invested in Grace Buckingham's clandestine clinic, the one she boasted would revolutionize neurosurgery with her so-called Phase 2 procedure, the very same miracle cure that had allegedly eradicated Liam Spencer's malignant tumor overnight. While Bill Spencer was busy barricading his son in Bel Air, and Finn Finnegan and Bridget Forrester were scrambling through legal subpoenas and hospital logs, Nick had been drawn to Grace's vision not by blind faith, but by the prospect of a medical breakthrough that could rake in billions, a venture ripe for the picking by a shrewd investor accustomed to turning crisis into opportunity. He had toured the clandestine operating suites hidden in a remote wing of an LA facility, signed non-disclosure agreements thicker than law books, and wired seed capital under the guise of a philanthropic grant to the Brain Research Consortium. What he did not anticipate was how entangled this financial gamble would become with his personal life, dragging Brooke into the murky aftermath of Grace's deception, and setting him on a collision course with Ridge, Finn, and a legal firestorm that threatened to scorch every inch of his carefully curated reputation. As Ridge held the diamond ring aloft, the words caught in his throat when Brooke emerged from the portico, eyes wide with surprise and something deeper. Confusion, perhaps, or a flicker of regret for the life she had paused back home. The moment stilled, charged with memories and unspoken longing, until Nick appeared on the marble steps behind Brooke, his white shirt catching the last of the day's glow, and for a heartbeat the three of them formed a tableau of crowned love and impenetrable rivalry. Ridge's palm ached as he closed his hand around the ring. Brooke's breath hitched as she turned to each man in turn, and Nick felt a sharp bile of guilt and desire twist in his gut. He had asked her to come to Italy to forget Ridge, to remember their passion. Instead, his secret dripped into the moonlight like poison, threatening to unravel every plan he had spent months crafting. When Ridge's voice finally broke the silence, his tone tender yet edged with steel. It was to ask Brooke to spend the rest of her life with him, right here, right now. As he knelt, straining against the weight of his own vulnerability, Brooke's eyes darted between the ring, Ridge's hopeful gaze, and Nick's outstretched hand. She saw both history and possibility in their faces, and for the first time in years, she wondered which path would lead her to happiness and which would lead her to regret. But before Brooke could answer, a private message pinged on Nick's phone. Encrypted, blinking with urgency. He glanced at the screen, Grace's name, demanding a conference call to discuss a sudden regulatory hurdle, a whistleblower claiming the Phase 2 data had been manufactured, not derived from real patient outcomes. As Bill's empire teetered on the brink of scandal and Finn and Bridget prepared to launch a full-scale legal assault, Grace needed more capital to smooth over FDA inquiries and silence dissenting voices. And Nick, holding Brooke's gaze while keeping his phone concealed at his side, realized the yacht, the romance, even the proposal would all collapse if the clinic's foundation cracked. He was a partner in this perilous enterprise, and every promise he made to Brooke now rang hollow against the backdrop of his financial duplicity. Ridge watched him with suspicion sharpened by pain. Brooke sensed the tension coiling in the air. And the piazza's ambient hum seemed to fade as the three stood at the epicenter of a love triangle more combustible than any scandal smoldering behind closed hospital doors. Without a word, Nick signaled to Ridge that this moment, sacred as it was, would have to wait. He led Brooke away from the fountain's gentle spray, murmuring apologies she could scarcely hear over the pounding of her heart. Ridge, still kneeling, let the ring slip from his grasp and clatter against the cobblestones, a diamond tear on ancient stone. Brooke turned, torn between the man who had built her life and the man who sought to reignite its flames, and Nick's secret slipped from his anxious grip like hot sand. He shielded her eyes from the full weight of the clinic's impending doom, promising that he would solve it, that she need never know the costs he would pay or the compromises he had made. But Ridge, rising from the ground with dust on his knees and sorrow in his chest, recognized the look in Nick's eyes, the look of a man shackled by secrets too heavy to bear. In that instant, Ridge knew the fight for Brooke's love was about to merge with the war for Grace's credibility, and soon every whispered conversation in Bel Air, every subpoena Finn penned, every boardroom showdown over lab results would converge on this crossroads between passion and betrayal. As night fell over Rome, the three of them, Ridge with his ring abandoned at his feet, Brooke caught between two futures, and Nick harboring the secret that could destroy them all, stood beneath a street lamp's halo. The city's ancient stones bearing witness to a drama more volatile than any staged on Forrester's runways. The Mediterranean breeze carried a chill of foreboding, as if even the gods of old whispered warnings through the olive groves. And while Nick plotted his next moves, transferring funds, silencing regulators, scrambling to prop up Grace's crumbling facade, Brooke's heart pounded with the realization that the man she loved most might not be the one who asked for her hand beneath the Roman sky, but the one holding the key to a secret that threatened to shatter them all. In the coming days, as Ridge returned to Los Angeles with renewed determination to win her back, and as Finn and Bridget closed in on the truth behind the phantom surgery, the yacht's romantic promise would feel like a fever dream, and Italy's golden light would be replaced by the harsh glare of legal truths and financial reckonings. And through it all, Brooke would have to choose not just between two men, but between trust and deception, love's promise and love's peril, in a story that, like the city itself, refused to be tamed by time or fate. The death of young Luna Nozawa sent shockwaves through the community of Los Angeles's elite and fractured the fragile peace that had begun to settle over the Forresters, Spencers, and the tangled web of friends and family who populate the corridors of Forrester Creations and the halls of Spencer Publications. Yet no one has been left more devastated, more bereft, or more prone to fury than her grandmother, the formidable Sheila Carter. A woman who once wore villainy like couture now stands on the brink of relapsing into her darkest impulses, a storm of grief and rage threatening to obliterate everything in her path. For weeks, she had carried the weight of redemption like a badge of honor, fighting for custody of her grandson and forging an uneasy alliance with Deacon Sharp, her husband and tether to the possibility of a calmer life. But in the cold, sterile brightness of the coroner's report, in the empty, echoing silence of Luna's favorite room, walls once hung with hand-painted canvases now barren, Sheila's newfound resolve has shattered into a million jagged pieces. Where once there was hope of a gentler existence, now there is only the burning question: who will pay for her granddaughter's untimely death? Sheila's anguish far eclipses the sorrow of Luna's mother, Poppy Nozawa, who has been reduced to a hollow-eyed figure drifting through the grand rooms of her own house, as if seeking solace in the ghost of a daughter who will never return her embraces. Poppy's grief, though heartbreaking, is tempered by memory and maternal love. She knew Luna's laughter and her secrets. She saw her triumphs and her fragilities. But Sheila's grief is primal and expansive, a chasm that consumes hope itself. Having once been the architect of countless tragedies, from manipulations that nearly tore apart the Logan Spencer Forrester triangle to schemes that cost lives and reputations, Sheila understands better than anyone how swiftly vengeance can consume the human soul. Now, having walked the path of repentance only to be rudely yanked back into the vortex of betrayal, she finds herself teetering on the razor's edge between grief-stricken martyrdom and the merciless wrath that once defined her. The lingering question, who will Sheila hold responsible for the life and brutal death of Luna, is the spark that threatens to ignite a conflagration of epic proportions. Any objective observer would agree that Liam Spencer, the gunman who fired the fatal shot, bears nominal responsibility. He acted in self-defense when Luna, frightened and erratic in the throes of psychological distress, lunged for the trigger that she believed could protect her from the demons she could not control. Yet Liam, now battling the ravages of cancer, can scarcely stand trial. His days are measured in moments of precious lucidity and the ticking clock of a tumor he cannot escape. He lies in solitude, his body weakened, his heart broken by the knowledge that in saving himself he has, in a single tragic instant, extinguished the life of the only granddaughter Sheila ever held. The severity of his illness, the sincerity of his regret, and the compassion of his loved ones have already turned public sentiment against prosecuting him for murder. Sheila knows this, and though part of her longs to see justice served, another, darker part recoils at the idea of pushing a dying man closer to death's door. She has tasted vengeance before and found it hollow. This time, she fears, vengeance may devour her soul entirely. Deacon Sharp, ambitious and ever loyal to his wife, stands at Sheila's side offering comfort and counsel forged in his own penitence. He reminds her that retaliation against Liam would serve only to perpetuate the cycle of violence that has scarred them both. Yet Deacon's counsel, though earnest, cannot soothe the crater of loss yawning in Sheila's chest. She fixates instead on those she believes truly responsible. The ones who set in motion the psychological unraveling that led Luna to that fatal confrontation. First in her sights is Poppy, Luna's mother, whom Sheila faults for adopting a teenager whose fragile psyche she never understood, for severing Luna's ties to her father, Dr. John Finnegan, and for raising a child who, as the young psychiatrist Lee Finnegan bluntly observed, never stood a chance under Poppy's misguided maternal regime. Sheila recalls every time she begged Poppy to allow Finn to spend weekends with his daughter, every time she warned her that Luna needed stability and structure, pleas that Poppy brushed aside in the name of autonomy and fresh starts. Now, as Sheila looks at Luna's abandoned journals and her half-finished sketches, she sees in every page evidence of a daughter she never truly raised, a granddaughter she attempted to nurture but was kept at arm's length by her own child. In Sheila's grief-soaked mind, Poppy's negligence is not just a failure of motherhood, but a crime against the very soul she loved and now mourns. Yet Sheila's rage cannot be confined to Poppy alone. She casts an accusatory gaze at Bill Spencer as well, for it was his negligence, his decision to allow Luna to be held in painful isolation at the hospital, under lock and key in that high-security psychiatric ward, that ignited the spark of rebellion in Luna's young heart. If Dollar Bill had shown her compassion rather than suspicion, if he had allowed her to see friends or granted her a nurturing environment instead of confining her behind reinforced glass, Luna might still be alive today. Sheila's memory drifts back to the cold corridors of that facility, to the hushed tones of guards who saw Luna as a problem to manage rather than a child to heal. And she recalls the moment when Luna, in desperation, stole a gun from a distracted nurse's desk. A tragic theft enabled by the very system Bill had championed to protect his family. In Sheila's mind, Bill Spencer looms as the architect of the conditions that turned Luna's anguish into mortal panic, and she vows to confront him the minute he re-enters her orbit. Still, most of Sheila's fury is reserved for the one she once considered an ally, Lee Finnegan, Luna's stepmother, and the doctor who prescribed the medications that left Luna groggy, unbalanced, and susceptible to blackouts. It was Lee who dismissed Sheila's pleas for alternative therapies, who insisted that Luna's psyche would stabilize with the right cocktail of pills and therapeutic regimens. It was Lee who refused to heed Sheila's warnings that the teenage girl was spiraling, that her journals spoke of voices and visions no medication could silence. Now, as Sheila stares at the evidence of Luna's self-inflicted wound, she sees in Lee's clinical detachment not compassion but culpability, a betrayal of the sacred duty to protect rather than pacify. Sheila begins to imagine a reckoning, a cold reckoning that will force Lee and Poppy to account for the tragedy that ended Luna's bright, unpredictable life. And she knows that when the time comes, she will stand at the center of the courtroom, eyes ablaze, demanding answers and retribution for the child she loved more fiercely than reason allows. But beneath this seething desire for vengeance lies a deeper, more precarious question. Will Sheila Carter abandon her hard-won redemption and return to the ruthless mindset that once made her the most feared woman in Los Angeles? She has tasted the peace that comes from restraint, the bittersweet satisfaction of having resisted dark impulses when they threatened to overtake her. Deacon's love has been a balm for old wounds, and the tentative acceptance she's found among the Forresters has given her glimpses of a life unshackled by vendettas. Still, grief has a way of unearthing the darkest parts of the soul, and Sheila senses that the chasm of her loss grows with every breath she takes. Already, she dreams at night of tracking Poppy through neon-lit hospital halls, of cornering Bill Spencer in his glass-walled offices and forcing him to watch recordings of Luna's last moments. She imagines Lee Finnegan kneeling before her, begging for mercy she has no intention of granting. The drive for vengeance hums through her veins, promising a purpose now that her granddaughter is gone. And though she knows the pull of darkness can consume her completely, she cannot deny the intoxicating allure of retribution, the siren call of justice carved by her own hands. Next week on The Bold and the Beautiful, audiences will witness the slow, inexorable spiral of Sheila Carter's grief into rage. Will she confront Poppy in a scene of unparalleled melodrama, her voice cracking with pain as she accuses her daughter of murder by negligence? Will she storm the offices of Spencer Publications, demanding to speak with Bill face-to-face and deliver an ultimatum that shakes the company's foundation? Or will she unleash her wrath on Lee Finnegan, infiltrating the Forrester family's sacred sanctum to deliver a fateful warning that redemption has its limits when children die? The stakes have never been higher, the emotions never more raw, and the question at the heart of the saga grows clearer with each passing moment. Can a soul broken by grief resist the siren song of revenge, or will Sheila Carter slip back into the darkness she once ruled, a fallen angel determined to reclaim her throne through fire and fury? As loyalties shift and alliances crumble, one truth remains undeniable: nobody suffers like Sheila, and when her pain finds its outlet, no one in Los Angeles will remain untouched by the storm she unleashes.